Welcome to the review of a new DC LiPo charger from ISDT. It's called T8 and it's quite an interesting product in ISDT portfolio. Just like with other ISDT products, we get a unique design, high quality, great attention to details, and also ISDT's distinct feature, which is their user interface that makes navigating through the menus much easier than on many competing products on the market. It looks like ISDT is refreshing their line of chargers with slightly updated user interface and new, more rounded design. What makes the product really unique though is the fact that this is the first charger supporting BattGO technology. Also, this is the most powerful ISDT charger to date and the first one that supports 8S batteries. Packaging and box content are as minimalistic as pretty much with all ISDT products. The charger only comes with a very basic user manual, which is more of a product information card. That's typical, but that shouldn't be a big problem here, since the operation is rather straightforward and the user interface is very intuitive. ISDT started including screen protectors with their products, which is nice and can be actually quite useful. There are also some stickers in the box which are a bit less useful if you ask me. Let's have a closer look at the charger. On the front we have 2.4-inch IPS LCD screen and also 4-way navigation pad with a select button in the middle. This navigation pad replaces control dial knobs that ISDT has been using on their chargers up to recently. Initially I didn't like the navigation pad and I thought the dial knobs were actually better at navigating through the menus. However, after using this charger for a few days, I think the pad may actually be a bit quicker at going through the menus. I think this is mainly due to the fact that we're getting two additional buttons on the right and left here that enable to perform certain tasks without going through the menus and selecting them from the menus. The buttons of the navigation pad offer quite firm but a bit spongy response. I wish they were a little bit less spongy, but to be honest, it's not an issue. I didn't have any problems with the pad. Okay, let's move on. On the left hand side we have XT60 power input. We also have firmware update port and USB charging port. It's a little bit of the shame that ISDT stuck with proprietary update port here rather than just using a normal micro USB input. On the right hand side we have a balance port and XT60 power output. On the front we have some vents. On the back there are some more vents and we can see ISDT fan underneath. And there's nothing really on the bottom apart from a sticker with some additional specification. As I mentioned already, this charger is compatible with BattGO technology. That means that both XT60 ports have additional pin here that enable to transfer some data from BattGO compatible batteries. As with other ISDT products, the build quality is excellent. If you have a closer look, you will notice there's no gaps anywhere. Everything is well put together and there's no weird noises when applying pressure anywhere. Before moving on with the review, let's compare the T8 with the previously most powerful ISDT charger, and that's SC-620. The 620 is rated at 500 watts power output, which makes the T8 twice as powerful charger. What's quite remarkable here that ISDT managed to squeeze out twice the performance of the charger that has roughly similar volume here. As we can see, the T8 is a bit smaller but also a bit thicker. So that's quite an achievement. Unfortunately, there is a slight downside to this, which I will be talking about in a few minutes in the performance section of the review. As I mentioned already, ISDT tweaked the user interface on T8, so it looks a little bit different than on the older chargers. Let's quickly compare this to the SC-620. So this is the main screen. If we scroll down, we get this information, and pretty much the same here. It's essentially we get access to exactly the same information, but it's presented in a slightly different way. And so this is system settings, and this is system settings here. So it's a little bit different. And this is task menu. Task menu looks exactly the same. Let's just start the task. Start here. So this is the first screen, which shows you the voltage of each cell. This is the second one that shows the resistance of each cell. It's gonna show up in a few minutes. And the last screen that shows the working info. Essentially, the information is all the same, it's just presented in a different way. And also, you probably noticed that I could stop the charging on this one just by pressing stop, and the same way I can start it like that. Whereas on this one, I have to go through the menus. So to stop that, I have to press that and select stop. And on this one, I can just press stop and it's done. Let's plug in the charger and have a closer look at the menus. First the power source and the battery. So after hooking up a battery, we have access to two screens. The first one shows each cell individual voltage here, plus the total battery voltage in the left hand side corner. And the second screen shows some working info, and that's the input voltage, internal temperature of the charger, and also total number of batteries charged in a day and in total. Navigating through the menus is really easy. We either go up or down. We can also perform the select action by pressing the middle button. We can go back using the left hand side button, and we can also perform the task or stop the task by pressing the right hand side button here. To go to the system settings, just press and hold the middle button, and that's where it takes us. So we can change the language to whatever we have here. We can perform firmware sharing with compatible chargers. We can see the system information, and that's the software running on our T8 at the moment. We can perform system self-checking. We can change the volume from low, middle to high, or switch it off altogether. Change the completion tone from single to repeat. That's the tone that will be played when we finish the task. So it's either going to be single or repeated. We can change the backlight from automatic to low, middle or high. We can select max input power to make sure we won't be drawing more power from our source than we want to. And we can also select the minimum input voltage. Now we can go back. To start using the charger, we have to go to the task settings menu, which is accessed by pressing the middle button once. In here we can change the battery chemistry. We can change the final cells voltage, and this menu will change accordingly to the battery we selected and also to the task we selected here. So say if we go for LiPo, we can change the voltage from 415 to 425, and if we go for high voltage LiPo, this will change to 430 up to 440. And the same way, if we go from charge to, say, storage, our final voltage will change from 375 to 395. Okay. The cell count is normally selected automatically according to the battery that is plugged in. If there's anything wrong, we can always override this manually. We can change the current, which goes from 30 amps down to 0.1, and we can also change the task from charge to discharge and storage. Discharge and storage is pretty much a discharge with a different end voltage settings. So we go discharge, obviously the current will change here. We can go from 5 amps down to 0.1. Let's actually start with the task that you probably won't be using on this charger much, or probably at all, which is either discharge or storage. The reason for that is that this charger, let's select the maximum discharge current, which is 5 amps. The reason for that is that this charger can only provide 10 watts of actual discharge power. ISDT states that the maximum discharge power is 20 watts, but unfortunately you only get 10 watts plus 18 watts of balancing power. So I have no idea where the ISDT got the 20 watt figure from, because in my opinion it should be either 10 watts or 28 if we include the balancing power. Just stop it quickly, unplug the balancing port. Again, discharge 5 amps, start, yes. As you can see, without the balancing lead plugged in, we can only get 10 watts of the discharge power. So if you want to discharge your batteries on a regular basis, I would suggest getting a dedicated discharger. Okay, having this out of the way, the two tasks that you probably won't be using much on this charger, let's actually charge this battery. Charge, let's say 422 to make it more interesting. Okay, so fast charge is done, and now it should quickly finish charging in a few seconds. There we go, so that's charge done here. If for some reason you would like to charge or discharge your battery without using a balance lead, this is possible on this charger. Let me just show you, just plug in without the balance lead. Cell count, start. We just have to confirm we want to perform a task without a balancer. And off we go. Now we know how to use the charger, so let's quickly run a few tests, starting with voltage readings accuracy. We'll be comparing readings of the T8 with my multimeter and ISDT battery checker. So the readings on the T8 are 381, 382, 381 and 381 for the fourth cell, and the total voltage is 15.2 volts. Okay, so you're getting 381, 381, 381 and 382, and the total voltage is 1525.24, so that's 50.2 probably rounded down. And now let's see what our multimeter says. The first cell is 381, the second one is 382, the third one is 382, and the fourth one 383. So these are slightly higher, but I noticed that my multimeter usually gives slightly higher readings, and the total voltage is 15.3. So there's nothing unusual going on here and everything seems fine. All the measurements are in the same ballpark and I'm fairly certain they are within the measuring error. So I'm quite happy with the results here. For the next test, let's compare the power output shown on the ISDT charger with the GT Power wattmeter. Something small. The noise you can hear is the noise of my power supply. Okay, so ISDT shows 2.5 amps. This is 223. Okay, let's move up a little bit. Again, we're getting 5 amps on the charger and 430 or 440 on the wattmeter. Okay, so for 10 amps on the charger, we get about 9 on the wattmeter. And just let's move it a little bit up again. This is the actual fan on the ISDT charger. So you can see it's much louder than my power supply fan. And again, we have 15 amps on the charger and about 13, well, just under 14 amps on the power meter. I've done more testing with this charger and this power analyzer, and every time I'm getting roughly 10% lower reading on the wattmeter than I get on the ISDT charger. This wattmeter has not been professionally calibrated, but it shouldn't show such a big difference. So I don't know where the discrepancy comes from, but I would imagine that ISDT shows slightly different value than the actual power output that is fed to the battery. One thing I would like to test in this review, but unfortunately I won't be able to, is the maximum power output of this charger. The reason for that is that I don't have any 8S batteries lying around, and to actually test the maximum power output we need an 8S battery simply because the maximum current is limited to 30 amps. What I'm gonna show you instead, what happens when the charger reaches 400 watts power output. And we will see how high the temperature gets and how fast the fan speeds. This should give us a good indication of thermal performance and temperature control of this charger, simply because if you go any further than that, it's not gonna get any better. The temperature is gonna get even higher. So we're starting with 40 degrees Celsius now. The ambient temperature is roughly 21.5 Celsius. This is still my power supply, just running a little bit faster. Okay, now we reached 60 degrees Celsius and the fan on the charger started spinning. Okay. I have tested that before and noticed that the temperature will not drop below 60 degrees Celsius anymore, and it will stay at around 70 Celsius for the whole time the charger outputs about 400 watts. So this is the limitation I mentioned to you at the beginning of the review. It's really nice to have such a small charger that can provide 1000 watts of power, but unfortunately generating so much power always creates heat, and you can only squeeze in so much cooling performance into such a small volume. So that's the compromise we have to make. If you want to have a small charger, you have to deal with higher temperatures and larger fans. Actually, during this test, the temperature dropped a little bit when the fan started spinning faster. I haven't noticed that before. This is definitely good news, as it means that this wasn't the fan's maximum speed, and we still have some headroom to keep higher temperatures in check, since the fan can still run faster and push more air through the charger. Right, I think that's enough, and I think you have a pretty good idea about the temperature control and the fan noise on the end on this charger. Let's just stop it here. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. I'm not sure if you can see that in the video, but I quite like the breathing light on the ISDT logo. That looks quite cool actually. And that's all I wanted to show here, so let me quickly conclude the review. I am fairly certain you have a good idea what to expect from the T8 and what are its strengths and limitations. Let's start with bad things. Personally, I was a bit disappointed as I was hoping to replace my SC-620 charger with something more powerful. However, not because I need more power, but because I was hoping for a quieter operation at the same power output. Before I put my hands on T8 and realized how small it actually was, I thought a 1000-watt charger will offer silent operation up to around, I don't know, 400-500 watts. Unfortunately, due to the size, the cooling and thermal performance of the T8 is not much better than its smaller brother. So things do get hot and loud on the T8. The other negative point is the maximum discharge capacity. The specification says it's 20 watts. Now we know that the pure discharge capacity without the balancing power is actually 10 watts. Even if it was 20 watts, this is still nothing on a 1000-watt charger, and I would say you probably don't want to discharge your batteries on a regular basis using the T8. Last thing to bear in mind is the fact that the actual power output measured by my watt meter was about 10% lower than the value displayed on the T8. So there is a possibility that the actual maximum power output of the T8 is slightly below 1000 watts, which is still a lot considering the size. Now for the good things, and there are quite a few of them. As with other ISDT products, the T8 offers excellent quality and unique design. We get the same, slightly improved fantastic user interface and great looking screen. The T8 is impressively small with amazing size to performance ratio. It's the most powerful ISDT charger to date and supports 8S batteries. And this is the first charger on the market that supports BattGO technology. We still don't know how useful this feature will be, but it's there nevertheless. On top of that, the price is actually not bad considering how powerful the charger is. So it looks like the T8 is a very nice addition to the ISDT family. However, if you are after a quiet charger that runs cool, you should probably look elsewhere. If the limitations I mentioned earlier don't bother you, and you want to get a super small, super powerful and good looking charger, which is a pleasure to use, you can't go wrong with the T8. Because of the low weight and compact size, the T8 will make a very good field charger in my opinion. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below or join the discussion at RC Group's forums. Thank you for watching.